All right, Swing Thought nerds, we're back. It's another edition of Swing Thoughts. Recording this, I guess this is the second time we've done it since I've been away. I'm in Mexico, and Coach Tim is in Guelpa.
Snowy Guelph.
Yeah, man. There's been unprecedented snow all over North America the last week or so. Did you hear about that snow in California?
Oh, absolutely. And people are still stuck at home. I don't know whether it's 1 inch of snow or whether it's a foot. So I should probably know more about it than I do, but
yeah, I don't even think it's funny because we're of an era, you and I, age-wise, where we had the metric system our whole lives, but I still think of snow in feet and inches.
Oh, 100%.
Welcome to Swing Thoughts, kids. As always, brought to you by TaylorMade Golf. Very excited to start hitting the new stealth stuff. Like I've been talking to the guys at TaylorMade because when I get back, I'm picking up the new driver, new 3-wood, the hybrid. Have you actually received those items yet?
I have. I even got my new Spider putter this week. Like I'm giving my hallway a workout.
They're so good they've been so good to us over the last 7 or 8 years. And here's something I'm going to do this year that I've never done with them. I'm picking up my equipment when I get back on the 2nd or 3rd of April. But I've asked one of the guys, I said, hey, listen, can I just go back in the lab for a couple hours just to tweak just so that I want to make sure the equipment, obviously the fitting was perfect, but I just want to hit those clubs with those guys watching me hit them just to make sure in case I need to change the lofts. And here's the thing, because we've never talked about this before. We always talk about fitting and getting your clubs, but I think this after fitting thing is something that a lot of good players do just to make sure that, what I fit in December is going to be the same in April, right?
You are becoming professional. You're taking this to another level.
That's right. I'm very serious about it.
You'd have an entourage now?
I would like one. I'm an entourage of one. Believe me, there's enough things going on in my head. It's like I have an entourage. So TaylorMadeGolf.ca is the place you go for all the information. It's not too late to book your fitting. I know they have lots of room, but it's going to start booking up fast. TaylorMadeGolf.ca. And Tim, we're excited, and we don't want to give too much detail, but we're excited about a couple things. Later in the show, we're going to tell you about a guest that's going to help kick off our brand new season. This is the unofficial season, but the new season, the week of the Masters. If you stick around for a little while, we'll tell you who our guest will be. I don't know, would you say one of our biggest names? Well, certainly in the top 5 or 10.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned this guy's name in the golf world, and it was, oh yeah, that guy. Whoa.
So that guy is coming to Swing Thoughts the first week of April. Also coming to Swing Thoughts the first week of April, Tim, we're excited to welcome a new sponsor. And all we'll say about this new sponsor is we want you to go and just Google who is OscarBravo.com. It's pretty cool, actually. It's a new brand of clothing, very, very unique, very bespoke.
Ooh.
Who is? I know. Who is?
Yeah, you've got a daughter in New York who does marketing. You're upon all these new words now.
Who is OscarBravo.com? And go check that out. Now it's my pleasure to introduce to you someone that I sort of have only met through correspondence, but on our last show, I said to Tim, listen, I got 2 stories for you. One is the story of meeting the happiest golfers I've ever played with. And that was fun meeting those guys that, take a different, that they play golf probably the way we'd all like to play golf, with a sort of a light spirit. The other story I said to Tim that I would tell you is how I met a former tour player. I was on the range one day, and I could just tell by the quality of his ball striking that this guy was something beyond me. Because, I go to the range thinking, I'm going to be the best guy. And I turn around, I'm like, nope, that guy's got some skills. And that guy was a guy named Terrence Miskel, who played on the the old Hogan Tour. He was like the former California State amateur champion. If you look this guy up, like he's got super golf cred, played with Lehman, played with Mike Weir, and then he ended up getting a little bit injured. I think he played a few events on the PGA Tour. Anyway, he was using these swing training aids. And of course, I'm like, hey, what's that all about? And it turned out it was a completely different way of training your body for golf, which brings us to our guest today. His name is Mike Romatowski, and he's been a personal trainer, a golf fitness expert, and a post-rehab exercise specialist. And he created this system called Mach 3 Golf Speed Training. And I just want to get right to it, Mike, because it really is different. First of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So let's just go back a bit. Mescal is a guy that you know from Texas, right?
Yes, San Antonio, yes.
And Tim, he's a guy like sort of mid-50s, very strong. And, I've been around a lot of guys that hit the ball, pretty good. But I looked, but he was telling me, Mike, he said these training aids have taken him to like ridiculous speeds. First of all, how does talk a little bit about what your training system is, and then maybe why it's different than some of the other systems out there?
Yeah, so, we are a speed training system, but we're not what you would call overspeed, meaning with us, only a small percentage of the training are you swinging as fast as you can. I would say 5% of the time. All the rest of it is what I would call strength in relative patterns and in conditioning. So a guy like Terrence, and I don't claim to know his numbers off the top of my head, but I would say his ball speed probably has increased 15, 16, 17, 18 miles an hour because he dedicated a certain amount of time to very consistent workouts in our classes that we have here in San Antonio. So I would say if there's anything different about Mach 3, it's that we're increasing speed through efficiency and not asking somebody to swing harder. And really there's two reasons why people are afraid of speed training sometimes. One is they think they're going to get hurt. And the other is they think they're going to start hitting the ball sideways. And so what's needed is a system where neither of those things is going to happen. So it's not an explosive overspeed system. It's more efficiency and patterns with a little bit of an overspeed element.
Well, Mike, why don't you explain to our listeners basically what do you do in a session?
Mm-hmm. So in a weekly class in our gym, we have about a 10-minute warm up that's movement based. So it almost looks like martial arts training. And that's the way we start every class. And then we have another system that's called Rotex Motion, which is a system by which we balance our bodies, and it's for injury prevention. So that takes up like the first, I'm going to say 15 minutes of the class. Then we have a whole variety of training tools. And what I'll say is it's how we train for the entire game. It is speed training, but it is how we train for the game and for the shots that a real golf course will present you. Uphill lie, downhill, side hill, 1 foot in the bunker, 1 foot out. The rough is 6 inches high, the sand is wet, there's branches in your backswing, that kind of thing. So really, I tell people, you're going to be glad you did this when you get those awkward stances and those, it is a game of strength. Golf is a game of strength, and people are finally accepting that. And really what I would say is there have been great players who were not particularly flexible, but there's never been a great player who was weak, and there never will be. It is a game of strength.
So, Mike, for people that aren't going to come to San Antonio, like myself, but I ordered a couple of these things on Mach3speedtraining.com. And when you go to this site, everybody, you're going to see a lot of you're going to see a lot of what Mike's going to be talking about. But I ordered 2 of the things that Terrence had, and I've done speed training with speed sticks, and I swing it. I still swing it pretty fast. But what I noticed with these items, and I got the Speed Bomber, go check this out, everybody, and these things called the Jet Sticks. And what I noticed from I've only done a couple of sessions, And what I noticed right away is that I was fatigued, and I was fatigued after 45 minutes. And I'm in pretty decent shape. So I didn't start. I mean, I know in the protocol you say it's going to take 2 or 3 weeks to get up to, but I swung it with some gusto from the start. And I can tell you after 45 minutes, Mike, I was done. Because what it does, Tim, is it builds up core strength. And please jump in when you want, Mike. It's not just training to swing faster, it's training to get stronger. Would that be fair?
Yeah, that's really what I was talking about is initially, so we use a concept called speed out in front. And that is just a description of how you're using your energy and where you are trying to create the speed. And then beyond that, it's a matter of getting stronger in patterns that are relevant to the game.
Right.
So, we can say, yes, you need to be stronger. Well, hopefully you would say, well, what kind of strength? Is it how much I can bench press? Is it how much I can squat? Yeah, what kind of strength? And the pattern of the exercises doesn't have to be exactly like your golf swing, but it has to be close enough to be relevant. And then the flip side of that is all of the tools that we use are designed so that you almost can't make a bad move. You really can't swing our tools over the top. You can't be steep. They're going to come from, in general, shallow from the inside type of a pattern. And so no matter which tool it is, you're continually getting stronger in a pattern that's relevant. And that's really, what you want is some kind of experience where the initial speed gain comes very quickly. So you get a quick reward. That comes from speed out in front.
Wow, it seems like cheating.
Let me see if I can help you. When Mike talks about speed out in front, what I believe you're talking about, and I've already experienced using these tools, is that all the exercises are designed so that the speed comes through the ball and after. There's a bunch of statics. There's a bunch of static starts. There's some dynamic movement. But what I really, really like about it, and what I think is exciting for golfers, is you learn that in order to do it correctly, that you need to swing it so that it's getting faster post impact. Would that be correct?
Yes, that's what you're trying to do. So here's what this boils down to. In golf now, we can measure everything that happens in the swing. You can measure 1,000 different swings. Or you can watch a video of a swing and you can see things that are happening. How a great player uses his hips, how a great player uses his shoulders, how he appears to be shifting his weight. So the question in the end is, I can measure all this stuff and I can see stuff, but what am I going to ask the golfer to try to do? And I only want to ask them to do one thing. I don't want to ask them to do 6 different things or 12 different things. So what we're saying is try to make maximum speed happen after the ball, past the ball. If you measure, it may happen and it may not, but it's what am I asking you to try to do? And that one phenomenon of trying to make it happen past the ball makes it be its greatest at the ball. And that's all you want.
Mm-hmm. That's so
it's
cool.
Very non-technical.
Yeah, well, I love that. Mm-hmm. I saw somebody, I forget where it was, like, one of those real things you find on Instagram or something. Someone had a picture of a video of Tom Watson on a range. The speed after impact is incredible.
He's a great example. And a lot of the guys from his era are great examples. Jack Nicklaus would have been a Mach 3 poster boy. If you watch him, especially in the 60s, Johnny Miller even, those guys had what I call a lot of flash speed toward the finish. And so what we're saying is actually this: where is the end of this movement? Right? It's pass the ball upward, and if you're right-handed, it's a little bit to your left. But you're letting the finish of the movement dictate how you move. The finish actually creates the move, right? So we do a lot of drills where we actually start at the finish. We're identifying where all of this is going to come to its maximum. and then we'll pull back from there and go back to it. So the ball doesn't mean anything to us at all. The ball or the position of the ball, it's just kind of a halfway point, and the ball's going to get swept away by the move you're making. But we want, if you were to be standing with your driver about to hit a drive, and we drew a line from the ball to your left heel, let's say, we need you to live and breathe out in front of that line, not only with your speed, your strength, your energy, your focus, everything. So we're never going to talk about what happens behind the ball, i.e. the backswing, or even really the transition or the downswing, whatever you want to call it. We're saying the finish is everything.
Right.
We're not talking about exactly what it looks like, but how does it feel to be there with a lot of speed and strength?
Okay, Tim
What does
wants to
that
jump
feel
in.
like?
Hang on,
Yeah,
hang
I
on a
love
second.
that.
Tim wanted to jump in there.
I was fortunate enough to spend time with George Knudson, who was one of the greatest ball strikers who ever lived. And he talked all the time about hold your finish. That was just the key to him was the finish.
Sorry, with
And
my
you'll figure out
camera,
that
I'm
light
trying
thing,
to get
Mike.
through it.
What you're hearing, if you're not watching this, is Mike's trying to position himself in his
There we go.
house
That's
somewhere.
kind of
Yes,
a-
there we go.
yeah.
Yeah,
I got all kinds
great.
of light coming into the room
That's
from
right.
various
You know,
places.
for a second there, you looked very angelic. Go ahead, Timmy.
Yeah, anyways, that hold the finish thing is so crucial. I remember my dad was a very good player. And I remember when camcorders first came in and I was looking at him, and if he came to a nice balanced finish, I went, you stoned it, didn't you? He went, oh yeah, from that great finish. But the thing that I think is really interesting is in light of what I just said, was that when you put your focus of attention past the ball, that just makes so much sense in terms of what we talked about, that, you know, creating speed after the ball. But it also works, I would say, against the tendency for golfers to just in this zeal to hit the ball damn hard, to release everything from the top,
Right.
and they just lose everything.
Timmy, before Mike jumps in, you know, it's funny. I just wrote down as you were talking, like, because my older brother, I played a lot of golf with him where I was in Mexico previously, and like a lot of higher handicap players, his vision is, and you can see it in you know, older, you know, higher handicap players. I said it looks like you're swinging to the ball, and I said look at good players, they're swinging through the ball. Is that kind of what you're saying too, Timmy?
100%.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. You look at Knudson or any good ball striker, it looks as though they're swinging to a place past the golf ball. And Mike, we've all heard this our whole lives, that the ball just kind of gets in the way, or as you say, it gets collected by the swing.
Right, and it's really the most important thing. So in fact, if you were to teach me any sports motion, a cross court forehand in tennis, how to throw a right cross, how to shoot a free throw, I want you to show me the finish first. If you do that, you'll have the best student you've ever seen, because intuitively I will now have 99% of what I need to know, because I know where to go. And so I'm just going to intuitively go there. And now you might have to refine me a little bit and tweak me a little bit, but you're going to see somebody who moves well immediately for the movement that you're trying to teach me, because you showed me where to go. And so let's even take a free throw. If you show me the point at the end where the ball has left my hand and my arm is outstretched and so on, I can almost reverse engineer it very intuitively. I can come back from there and then go back to it, come back from there and go back to it. So in the golf swing, we really want to understand, where's the finish? What does it feel like to feel really strong there? And guess what? If you feel strong there, it means you were strong all the way through. You can't lose it early and then somehow reassemble it by the end.
Right.
You're going to have a feeling in totality that everything built up and then maximized there. So if I say to either one of you, swing as hard as you can, you know what you'll do? You'll dump it in the first microsecond of transition and it's gone. But if I show you something out in front and and put you there and let you feel what it feels like there and let you swing a jet stick, by which you're training pretty much exclusively by the sound that it makes.
Mm-hmm.
So with the jet stick, you're just moving the sound out in front. If you were a total beginning golfer, had never ever hit a ball, and we give you 5 minutes of jet stick drills, you in all likelihood will look like a tour player 5 minutes later when we put a ball in front of you. You'll have a great technical swing.
We should say, Mike, the jet stick is basically a golf club with a chain and a weighted ball on the end. Again, go to Mach3speedtraining.com and have a look at what we're talking about, and you'll see what I have is the Speed Bomber, which is like a rubber. I can't even describe it. But it's like a rubber tube with a knotted rope on the end of it. But this jet stick, what Mike's talking about is you swing it so that you can hear the speed past you. That
Right.
the sound of the whoosh is happening way out in front. And in order to do that, you don't even have to think about your golf swing. You just have to think, okay, I want it to be out there. And again, I did a couple of training sessions in the last week or so, and I can tell you that it activates muscles that good players, I was talking about how does Rory McIlroy hit it so hard, is because he's engaging his core in a way that most of us don't. Is that correct, Mike?
Yes, it is most likely quite correct. So the question is, how can a golfer do that without having to technically be thought to do it? So in other words, it's something that happens. And if you are maximizing your energy well past the ball, that would have to happen along the way, or you couldn't be maximized. You see? So again, you can watch great players and you can measure stuff that happens. You can see things that you think are happening. When you start having the idea that you're going to have to try to teach the golfer to do that, you may very well run into issues, because is it easier to teach someone to produce that sound out in front and therefore speed out in front? Or is it easier to teach somebody how to use their core at impact? I guarantee you that it's easier just to take the jet stick and train by the sound. And lo and behold, the core becomes a very efficient transfer station of energy. And that's really what you're looking for. So, golf is a thinking man's game, but not during the swing. It's your strategy and you plotting what to do and how you're going to play the shot and how you're playing the round. That's where you want to think. You don't want to think about the swing. And if you watched the PGA Tour telecast yesterday, they were talking about, I think it was Azinger was talking about Jordan Spieth. And he said, when he's rehearsing his swing before a shot, he's got all these moves he makes, and you can see his wheels turning in his head. But when he's in trouble and he just has to be creative, he doesn't do any of that.
Mm-hmm.
He's suddenly an artist, and all of his best shots are pretty much trouble shots. So in a loose way, that's what we're looking for. Is look, we're not going to think about the swing. You need to feel what it feels like to maximize at the end.
Okay.
Well, Mike, we've been talking, what you just mentioned, we've been talking about, for 8 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's get away from thinking about golf swing.
Yeah, our show's called Swing Thoughts, but it's not about any swing thoughts at all.
Exactly.
Right.
So what it sounds to me a bit like is swinging more on instinct. That's a phrase we've used a few times on this show. And Howard, I just want to ask you, I want to get back to a question about, let me ask first. Howard, how do you relate the way you use these to, let's say, the Fred Shoemaker throwing clubs thing? Is it somewhat similar?
Yeah, so
actually, I'm asking Howard first.
Okay.
Well, I would tell you, it's similar, but here's the thing. Imagine throwing a club, but then hanging onto it. And again, the Speed Bomber, this apparatus, again, I'm not doing it justice, I know, Mike, describing it. That's why I want people to go to Mach3speedtraining.com and check it out. It would be as though you were throwing it, but then hanging onto it. But it is and it isn't, Tim. This is one of those things that, yes, we're getting a lot of great theory from Mike, but if you wanted to feel it, I'll tell you what, as a good player, as soon as I saw what Terrence had in these training aids, I ordered it the next day, didn't I, Mike? Like,
Yeah,
I
you
literally, I literally had only used them like for a second on the range, and I went, oh, I got to have this. Even
I
Mike,
can just so see you. I can see the wheels turning, the
as soon as
dopamine
I saw
going.
it. You know what? And this isn't a fair comparison, but it's the only thing I can compare it to. And again, with respect, you know when you see guys with an orange whip. So imagine a better version of that, but not. Again, Mike. Again, with respect, that's the closest thing I could sort of in my mind compare it to. So when I saw Terrence had these items, I'm like, oh, I got to have that. And at first I thought that'll just be a great way to warm up, which it will be. But it's so much more. And again, I'm not doing it justice by comparing it to the orange whip, but it's in that category. Would that be fair?
I would say roughly, yeah. I mean, when you actually swing them, they feel completely different. But I understand where you're coming up with that. And a speed bomber is kind of hard to describe in words, I think. But by the nature of the way the speed bomber flexes, the golfer is able to instinctively feel load, unload, load, unload. And it's impossible to swing that thing on a poor path. Like I could say, Howard, swing it steep over the top. You would only do it one time. And you would say, don't ever ask me to do that again.
That's right.
Because it really works shallow from the inside. And so when you watch somebody like Terrence swing it, who's quite strong, what you're picking up on really is the power in the finish and past the ball. That's what you're picking up on when you watch somebody, because you can hear it as well as see it.
Yeah, it definitely has it has two things. It's got an auditory element and it has a visceral element. So you feel it, but also you hear it. And listen, I've had no contact. This is the first time we've ever spoken, but I've been going back and forth with Mike on, emails and WhatsApps. But I just watched the training protocols on your website. That's what I did. I wrote down the things, and I've been doing it myself. And so with no one really instructing me, I can tell I'm doing it right because I can hear it. I know where the sound's supposed to be, and I can feel it. Because as I said to you at the beginning of this, I've done 2 45-minute sessions, and I was pretty fatigued. Mike Romakowski, listen, man. Romatowski, I hope this isn't the last time we talk. I know I sent you a message. I'd like to talk to you. So I just want to make sure I'm doing the protocols correctly, because I have a really good feeling about, and by the way, I do know Terrence's numbers, and they're ridiculous. I can tell you his miles per hour increase. And by the way, on the website, what Mike's saying is you can increase your club head speed. Somewhere your average for most of your students is somewhere around 11 miles per hour. Is that correct?
Yeah. Historically, it hasn't changed much since the first year. It's 11.5 miles per hour. Yeah. And about half of that usually comes in the very first session from the concept of speed out in front. Right. And then the other half historically will come over a period of a few weeks and months of training. But that's what we expect of people, to be honest. As you could imagine, a common question is, well, how fast can I get? And I learned to say, I have no idea, because I've seen people do things that I would have never expected in terms of the increase. We've seen 15 and 20 and 23 miles per hour increase as well. So I'm not about to predict anymore. I just say, I really don't know. That's up to you, but I'm expecting you to get 11 and a half, because that's historically the average.
Listen, man, I've sent you a note, and you let me know when you've got some time, because I think, again, I just want to make sure I'm doing it right, and then I'll report back to our listeners if I do get these increases. For the average person, that's like another 20 yards, and who couldn't use that, my friend?
Right.
Listen, Mike, I hope you enjoyed this. Mike Romatowski and the Mach3speedtraining.com is his website. And what a great time of the year to start thinking about. One day there won't be any snow on the ground. Mike, you send me a note and let me know when you're available. Okay, my friend?
Okay, great. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks, Mike. Nice to meet you.
There's Mike Romatowski.
Thank you.
There you go. Just let yourself out. Tim and I go on babbling like the nerds that we are.
That was cool.
It is cool. And yeah, it was funny. Like, and again, nothing against our friends at Speed Stick. I can tell you because people know we've had Ryan Robillard on the show a couple years ago. And what the difference between this and the Speed Sticks is basically you swing the Speed Sticks as fast as you can, and that's great. And I definitely think it's a worthwhile pursuit. But these are different. I don't know if you want to go check these.
I definitely want to check
these
it out.
apparatuses out because they're because, like I said, they strengthen your body, but they also do something that I think our listeners would resonate. Is they make you faster without thinking about how you're or why you're doing it, because it has less to do with your golf swing and more to do with a sort of a feeling.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by it, and makes me think of a few things. But that whole thing about, say, hold your finish.
Yes.
It just, when you have that sort of in your mind that, okay, when I'm done this, I can come to a nice finish. It just sets you up in such a way that you're going to finish in that you can't get to a nice finish position unless you're in balance, unless you've moved in some degree of sequence. You've allowed yourself to be drawn to the target.
When you think about it, you mentioned Knudsen. Knudsen always said, hold your finish. Mo used to say, my swing balances me.
Yep.
And again, I had this weird conversation with my older brother. I said, sometimes it looks like, and what happens to a lot of golfers is they're swinging to the golf ball. Yep. And then what happens is you see it, their chest stops, and then your arms go flying by you. But on your good swings, your whole body, not to get too technical, it rotates. Your chest rotates to the target, and your right shoulder is, for a right-hander, your right shoulder's closer. All those things that you'd like to see in a good swing. But this whole system, and as you mentioned, Knudsen, all that was if you could just get to that position, well, then all sorts of stuff would have had to happen that you want to happen without thinking about how to do it.
What I find interesting about this is that it aligns with a bunch of things that certainly I believe in, but mainly that if we put our attention out there as opposed to down here. And a lot of times when I'll say to a golfer, I said, "What's your target when they're hitting?" And they said, "Well, it's going to be that flag." I said, "No, actually, I think what it is, it says the ball. The ball is not the target."
That's
right.
right.
Well, what do you mean? I said, "Well, the target is out there. If you put your focus on the ball as your target, your body and brain, which are brilliant, will do everything possible to make sure you hit this thing. But it's there. But as opposed to releasing your energy to go out there, as you said before, it's like the club collects the ball on the way. And that's what I like about that. I've heard that before, is put your attention, say, on the front of the golf ball, or at least or on the target, whatever. It puts this out there, and thus our body will release itself through, as opposed to releasing everything on the beginning of our downswing. Which,
well, no, you said it right. If you're so, and then the phrase I've used for years is, and again I used it with my brother David. I said sometimes it looks like you're ball bound.
Yep.
That's what happens to a lot of higher handicap players, because they're so focused on being at the golf ball as the final destination. As you say, our brains are brilliant. So your brain goes, well, if that's what you're focused on, then all the energy is going there. And listen, it happens to all of us. I was playing the other day. I basically didn't keep score for the entire month of February. I mean, I did vaguely, but I never started a round where I was like, okay, what am I going to shoot today? Well, last Friday was the first day I kept score, because I was in a game with about 30 other guys, and everyone throws in money, so I knew my score was going to be counted. And I find myself 3 under through 5 thinking I should send my entry, when's the next Champions Tour, qualifier? And like it was just happening on automatic, right?
Totally.
Just automatic. And I was, because I hadn't had to keep a score. And then I got all excited. I made an eagle, so I'm 3 under through 5. And all of a sudden, I'm like, well, maybe this is the day I turn pro. And of course, then I went on a 3-putting fucking rampage. But the point I'm saying is we all get, all of a sudden, my focus changed from carefree, whatever, having a great time, to focus was on the golf ball. And I started to hit it like that. So we all have experienced moments like inside of a round, inside of a day, a session of ball striking. But what this stuff does, and what we're talking about today is, as he said, speed past the ball, focus past the ball is something of a technical nature, but it's such a feel that it aligns with what, we've been talking about, as you said, for nigh on 8 years.
One of the things that, if we had more time to get in with Mike, is the focus on rotation. When people think of training in golf now, most people think, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to do squats, deadlifts, all that kind of stuff. And that's all really good stuff, but that's basically building your strength, up vertically. Power in golf, you need that foundational power and strength like Mike talked about, but you need to be able to rotate through. And so he used something like a Rotex motion or something. I don't know. What's your take on how rotation comes into it? Because I think that to create speed after the ball, you've got to have a really good rotation going on.
I agree, but I don't. His point, and I think part of the way he trains is you get there without thinking about it. Like a lot of the stuff that he does with these devices is you start past the ball and you wind up and then you go back to that finish position, and so you get, in order to make the sound of this swishing sound. You can, by the way, anyone can do it with a golf club. You can just sort of like, where's that sort of snap, that towel snap feel. A lot of people, it's at the golf ball. But
you turn the thing that you get coached on is turn your golf club upside down.
Right, exactly.
Swing that so the grip is near the ground, and create that whoosh sound. Yeah, that's
so. This is, imagine, create that whoosh whoosh sound way up past your, sort of, for a right-handed player, way up past your left shoulder. Yeah, and that's what his whole thing. And by the way, the other thing if you look at his website, like, I've been fascinated by this. It's called Tathata Golf. Have you ever seen the commercials for this? It's like a martial arts kind of. You've never seen the spots for Tathata Golf? Gary McCord was involved with it. It's a bunch of people doing Tai Chi movements.
Does this mean I'm not watching the Golf Channel at 1 a.m. enough?
Possibly. Possibly. But it's fascinating. It's this whole movement about, it's a sort of movement-based golf methodology.
Yeah.
Where it's very much like Tai Chi. It's very much sort of body awareness. And I wanted to, at some point, I wanted to get him on to talk about it, because I've never met anyone that was trained in it, and he is.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I love all that.
Yeah.
The idea, Fred Shoemaker talks about what he calls, I think it's the nothing swing, and you swing as slowly as you can. And it takes an enormous amount of concentration. I could do it maybe once, and then, okay, what's the next thing I have to do?
That's right. Maybe this is
something more important to do.
Maybe this is a good time to announce our. We teased it at the beginning of the show. That coming the week, our new season kicks off. I think is it the 4th of April? It's the week of the Masters, right?
Yes, it is. I believe it's here. I can even look at my calendar. Why? Can you hear Freddie whining in the background? My God. April the 5th, Wednesday before the Masters.
April the 5th. Yeah. By the way, the Fred that Tim's referring to is not Fred Patterson. It's his boxer, his dog. No, and. Because I was thinking people were like, is Fred there? Why is he whining in the background? No, I can't hear your dog whining in the background. So on Wednesday, we're going to tape that. So that'll be the weekend of the Masters. We'll release that. You'll hear it, I guess. Wednesday's the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. So that Saturday, the very first Swing Thoughts of the new season, 2023, our guest will be Golf Hall of Fame instructor, really one of the guys that started the whole guru movement.
Absolutely.
Some of his students include Nick Faldo, Greg Norman, and others. He is the one of the best teachers that anyone has ever heard of over the last 35, 40 years. David Ledbetter will be our guest. Soak that in, swing thought nerds.
Absolutely. We're going to have Led on. Because golf's all about nicknames, right? Weirsy, Amesy, Led.
Have you ever interviewed him?
I have. Yep, I did.
Under what circumstances?
I was researching my book on Mo Norman, and I was at the U.S. Open at Oakmont, and he was walking towards the range, and I said, "Hey, David, I'm writing a book on Mo Norman. I just wanted to get your thoughts on him and his swing and how he developed it." And so ended up chatting for about 20 minutes. He was just a gracious, really nice guy. And so it was very kind of him to give me his time. He, at the time, I would say, so this is around 1994. He was at probably the top of the food chain in the guru business, having, Nick Faldo had taken the time off with him, retooled his swing. And that's where Ledbetter jumped to this level of notoriety, almost on par with the golfers. He oh my gosh, Led was the guy for sure.
Well,
Nick Price was one of his.
I was going to say, I forgot that Nick Price was certainly, Faldo famously playing the European Tour. This was the mid '80s, and he ran into Ledbetter, who was from South Africa. I think he had tried playing some tour golf, like a lot of those guys, and basically used Nick Faldo to experiment on some of these ideas that Ledbetter had about the golf swing. And Faldo took like a couple of years, he didn't take time away, but for a couple of years worked on getting his game ready to be a major winner. Because Faldo knew whatever he had before was too unreliable. And that was kind of the beginning of the golf guru. Because before that, you really didn't, I don't remember, Jack Grout was someone that worked with Jack Nicklaus, but he wasn't following him around from event to event. And so Ledbetter, sort of at the same time, it was Ledbetter, there was Rick Smith, then Butch Harmon, and a whole group of guys that became, as you say, as famous to all of us golf people as the players they were working with. Jim McLean.
Yep.
And it'll be
Haney.
Haney.
Who's the guy? Who was the guy? Was the Curtis Strange?
Jimmy Ballard.
That's it. That's exactly who I was thinking of. Jimmy Ballard.
I never met Mr. Ledbetter, but I have been to one of his academies because a kid that I knew at the National ended up going to work for him in Bradenton, which is where he has his sort of young player, the same setup they had there at Orange County. It's where their young academy is. Kids come from all over the world. And this guy that I knew was one of the young instructors there. So I've hung out at at a Ledbetter Academy. It's quite something. Yeah. It's quite a factory that he's developed there. And he's coming. So I just want to say he's coming on our show to promote a new training aid he's got.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting. One of the things I want to really ask him about, it'll be that whole thing. Like anyone who's listened to our show for a period of time knows that, it's almost like if I start talking about swing mechanics, I start to get a facial tick. And so when you think about David Ledbetter, you think about, there's the poster guru, if you will, for making sure your swing mechanics are in the right spot. Mm-hmm. But I really want to talk to him about that, taking care of your fundamentals, your swing, hitting positions, all that kind of stuff, versus playing and being in that spot of like Mike talked about, allowing yourself just to play and let things happen. But one of the things that I find about Ledbetter is that, here's where I was going with this. I actually, when he was I think he was at Lake Nona, mm-hmm. and had his academy there near Orlando. And I went to visit him. It was one of his acolytes, if you will. And there was Ledbetter working with Seve Ballesteros. And what's interesting and why I went down this path of talking about this was that a lot of people say that's when Seve was losing it. Seve had been this natural player, played on instinct, if you will, created this play of this way of playing, on a beach with a 3-iron in Spain. And here he was down the rabbit hole of mechanics, working with Ledbetter, who I'd like to say the poster guru for that. So I want to ask Ledbetter about that with Sevi, but also how do we, as average players or golf nerds like yourself and me to some degree, how do we balance that awareness of mechanics and just letting ourselves play?
Yeah, I mean, I have one. At home, I definitely, one of my golf instruction books is his. The one with it's basically I can't remember the name of it, but it's it's him, and it's cartoon David and cartoon Faldo.
Actually, it was cartoon David Frost. Sorry,
and Faldo's in there as well. They're all of them.
A little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. But they're all positional stuff, and
exactly.
And that's a very, that's a fair discussion to have with the guy that hasn't there's every guru, whether it's McLean or Rick Smith or our friend Mark Evershed, they all talk about positions somewhere that you need to hit, but how do you mitigate, trying to, have an early wrist cock and at halfway at P6 being a certain position.
Yep.
How do you mitigate that with having to, hit a 9-iron, 135 on an uphill lie? Like it really is I think for a lot of things, it's been great for a lot of people, but I think it's also screwed up a lot of golfers. And so it's interesting having Mike Romatowski on because his stuff is nothing about position. It's all about feel, training your body to feel a certain thing. But there's no getting around it that when it comes to, somebody that has a great eye for golf swings, excuse me, David Ledbetter is among the best ever. And I'm really looking forward to talking to him.
Oh, it'll be really fascinating. And that's one of the wonderful things about being able to do, a podcast like this is you get to meet these people and ask them things about, what they're known for, but also our own curiosity, which is basically we're stand-ins for our listeners, is to ask these questions of these people. But go ahead, because you have
I take exception with something you just said prior, when you said a golf nerd like you and me to a degree. How are you not exactly a golf nerd like me? It's because
I don't have a golf club in my hand every day of the week.
Well, only because you have you're a more responsible adult than I am.
Well, I think now we're getting to the nub of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe I am a bit more obsessive than you, but then again, here's what I do. I mean, I know what it takes to. I also get such a joy out of it as well. Totally. Before we wrap up, and I'm just mindful of the time. I was going to say Jimmy. I almost called you Jimmy.
This is the curse of the one-syllable name again. I've been doing this show for 8 years, and I thought it was Jim.
For a second, I thought your name was Jim. So Jimmy. Jimmy's got a new Substack. We've been talking about Tim transferring his blog to Substack because he's cool. And his latest one is sort of a sample chapter or a little tease, if you will, of a book that Tim's been working on called Quiet Mind Golf. It aligns with his Quiet Mind training system. And it was so funny at the start of the show. I said to Jimmy, I said, I read your thing the other day. Just remind me what it was. I really liked it, but I can't remember. I can't remember what it was about. But I did. I think everyone should read it. It's very good. It's kind of the basics. It's sort of the foundation of the Quiet Mind system.
Well, yeah. Thank you. I really like that thing you wrote. Now, just remind me what the hell it was about.
Dude, remember the email I wrote you? I said to you, hey, those guys we're working with, what's the name of them again?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you get to a certain age and you lose your nouns. And I put it this way. It's like, remember we were talking to Buddy?
Yeah, about that thing?
Place? About that thing.
So talk a little bit about the latest Substack on Quiet Mind.
Okay. I've been working on finishing a book called Quiet Mind Golf, and I've been editing, and I had a date of March the 1st set. So I've got a draft, I've sent, I think 5 or 7, not 6, draft chapters to my buddy. One of them is about, in essence, presence. And you'll hear someone like, say, Zinger, saying that he's got to be present, he's got to be in the moment. But a lot of people have really no idea what that means. And what they'll think it means is be in the moment for sure. But a lot of people think they have to clear their mind. And so there's a misconception of that, because I think if your mind is clear, it's an unfortunate situation, because you would be dead. Because your mind is always going. But being in the moment, being present, is being present to what's actually happening in that moment, not in the future or not 5 seconds ago. So how do we do that? And to me, it's around focusing really on our body and our sensations, because the body never time travels. That Star Trek beam me up thing, they haven't made that work yet. So how do we experience being in the present moment? I give the example of, well, if you're driving your car, just be focused on driving your car. What does that feel like? Where are your hands? What does your butt feel like in the seat? Or say when you're doing the dishes, just feel the pot in your hands, the water. What does that feel like? The bubbles. What's the sound of the water? What's the smell? And when you're fully engaged in the moment, you are present. And so that awareness you can take to golf, because if I'm, say, focused on the feel of my putter going back and through, or say on a chip, I can notice things that I wouldn't notice if I was thinking about, say, trying to do something with my hands or my head.
So let me just, I love that, because a lot of times, someone will have a chip shot or a pitch shot, and rather than thinking about and feeling having a sort of being in the present, they're thinking, I have to get this up and down, or what if I stub it, or what are my friends going to think? I hope I get it close. You're thinking a bunch of things that have nothing to do with the actual shot that you're about to hit, and the way it feels in your hands. And as you say, to be present, sort of like as opposed to time traveling to all those external thoughts that, again, have nothing to do with the shot you're about to hit.
Yeah, well, put it this way, a chip shot's a good example. Quite often what people will do is they're going to think about, what's the right technique here? What's the thing I need to do? Let's say, so someone might, all the different focuses people have. It could be, say, as a right-handed player, I'm going to keep a hinge in my right wrist here, or I'm going to have a flat left wrist going through. So they think of all this stuff, but what they don't realize, because they haven't felt it, is that the bluegrass rough is angled against them, and it's going to provide some resistance. So if you don't feel, and you don't, more importantly, notice what that feels like, you take a practice swing, whoa, there's some resistance there. Well, I'm going to have to create a little bit more speed. And then you notice that. And so rather than thinking about keeping your right wrist angled, you're going to have to create some speed. And I would say the creating speed awareness is going to lead to more solid strike than if you were focused internally on.
And trying to remember what you heard or were taught about the correct technique for hitting a pitch shot.
Exactly.
And I would say that, as a better player, I look at the lie and I'm trying to sort of decide where I want the ball to land. And I might take a couple of quick practice swings away from the ball and go, okay, this is the kind of shot I need to hit. I need to make sure I do, let's say I want it to be a bit of a low runner or whatever. So I'm thinking technically for a second about where I'm going to put the ball. But when I get to the golf ball, all I'm doing is thinking about the feel I need to create I've stopped thinking about the technical part. And all I want to do is feel what it feels like to make that swing. That's why the funny thing, I've had this discussion with you millions of times. They call them practice swings because you're practicing the swing you're about to do, not some other swing that you think. Like, seriously, a lot of golfers do that. They're practicing the technical swing,
right?
They're not practicing the swing that they're about to do. Like if I'm trying to hit a ball low, then I'm going to cut my finish off. I'm practicing the swing that I'm going to need in a couple of seconds. And I think more often I see golfers practicing something that has nothing to do with the swing that they're about to make.
Yeah, because they're invested, if you will, in this belief system that they have to do something technically right.
Yes.
And if I do that, the shot will be successful. And that thinking, that belief system, I think really just basically leads to self-interference.
Yes, of course.
Rather than, so let's take the idea of the hinged right wrist for a right-hander going through. I mean, that's something that, if you're looking at this on YouTube, you can see it. You look at good players through impact with the chipping, whatnot, that's what's happening. So people think that's where the focus is going to be. But let's take this back to what we talked about with Mike. If you put your attention in front of the golf ball towards the target, you're naturally going to retain that wrist cock. That hinge is going to stay naturally.
Right.
So you don't need to focus on it, in your mind to keep that. But if it's more on the motion you want to make and the feeling you're going to get, then these good things will be allowed to happen rather than trying to force them to happen.
By thinking about retaining the wrist hinge in your pitch shot, you are going to stub the ground a lot because you're not. It's not normal or natural. Like, we've had this discussion about, he was mentioning shooting free throws or throwing a ball or playing ping pong. Yes, I know those are more, reactive sports, although free throw is pretty close to having to hit a golf shot because you're starting from a static position.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you, good free throw shooters aren't thinking about retaining the angle and the difference between their radial ulnar deviation. But that's what bad chippers and pitchers do.
Yep.
I mean, I know you've worked with a couple people that I know that have had some chipping issues. And all those issues, and when they begin, are people trying to be too technical with it. We mentioned Ledbetter and Faldo. Faldo, when he was still on the broadcast, I missed him because one of the things I like about Faldo is that he would also throw in these little nuggets of golf instruction. And I use this one all the time. You can't be a good pitcher and chipper unless you keep your chest moving through the shot. But a lot of guys, back to our example at the beginning of the show, they get ball bound and they stop their body at the point of contact. But it shows up, it's really exacerbated when you've got a 20-yard pitch shot over a bunker. Because as soon as you stop your body, your hands, explode into the ground, and the ball doesn't go anywhere. But and Faldo said that, you just if you keep your sternum moving through the ball, it'll collect the ball enough for you to hit the shot you want. So anyways, check out Timmy's Quiet Mind chapter, wherever you find O'Connor material.
I want to hear about Terrence. Do we have time to hear about your experience with Terrence?
Yeah, I mean, just real quickly, I was hitting balls with my back to everyone. I was at the very right side of a range, and so my back said everyone behind me. And I was hitting balls and taping my swing and doing all this stuff that I do. And then I saw some guy kind of come next to me, and I saw, he looked like a golfer, but I heard him before I actually saw him hit a golf ball. I could just hear the contact. I heard the contact, and I turned around. I'm like, "Ooh, what do we have here? Some shooter." Like the dick that I am.
I'm no longer the alpha on this range.
What am I? Not the because what am I? Not the best golfer here. So I heard his contact. I'm like, "Oh, that sounds different." Then I turned around and I saw him just grip his club, and I'm like, "Oh, uh-oh." And anyway, long story short, we started talking, and he's a super nerd like us. He sat and talked to me while I was hitting balls when he was finished. He's talked to me for another hour about golf swings and release points. We were like really nerdy stuff and this stuff that Mike Romatowski was doing. And then he invited me to play with him. Now, his handicap is currently plus 3.7. And so, he's a real player. And then we talk, and plus he's a really nice guy. And told me stories about being on tour with Lehman and Weir. But we played 18 holes together. And here's the takeaway I want for everyone to hear. Yes, he hit some amazing shots. And we talked theory and, strategy and position. And he's a big Fawcett guy too. But I will tell you, in 18 holes of golf, we were just dicking around, hitting extra, because it's a little 9-hole course, hitting extra shots. But he hit bad shots too, is what I want everyone to know. This guy who's almost a plus 4 handicap, who probably shoots in the 60s as much as he shoots in the 70s, also hit some shots sideways. And I only say that because when you think about really good players, you think everything they do is really good. And guess what? It's
Yeah,
not. And I'm not
absolutely.
talking about I'm talking about shots he was trying on. Shots he wanted, he was saying, okay, I'm going to try, because we were talking about, what is your strategy here? And he completely hit it sideways. I'm like, was that jungle your strategy here, Terry? But man, but the quality of his good shots were just extraordinary. He has this 5-wood Timmy, and here's how far he hits a golf ball versus me. He hit his 5-wood 255 yards. That's kind of around my driver. It's kind of like driver-ish for me.
Yeah.
And pretty cool. And again, when he hit it good, it was really good. But I was sort of, not only was it a great experience for me to play, to spend the afternoon with the guy, but just kind of like reaffirming that, not every shot a pro hits or a high level player hits is on the button. It's just not.
That's I think that's one of the great things that I learned from Scott Fawcett and you talking about him was knowing our pattern of dispersion.
Exactly.
And the ball does go all over the place, even for the best players in the world. And what I think is the learning I take from that, or the perspective, shall I say, is that, as a human being, that's going to happen. You're going to have some days in which the dispersion is way out there, and times it's a little tighter. And if I happen to miss one on, coming to the 18th green and, lose the match I'm in or not finish well in a tournament, it doesn't mean I'm a bag of shit.
Yeah.
It means I'm a human, and that's going to happen.
And it doesn't mean that that's a permanent state of being, which is what happens to a lot of we've had this discussion. Like when you hit a bad shot, part of what goes on in your brain is you think, well, is this it forever?
Yeah, I suck forever.
Exactly. He did remind me of one thing, because I decided that the month of February when I was down here I was going to try and, take what I'd been working on indoors to take it to outdoors. And so I really was very vigilant. But what I'd gotten lazy with was where I was trying to hit it. Because a couple times he stopped me and said, where are you trying to hit this? I said, I'm a sort of a soft draw. And he goes, oh, no, but where? Where's this going to start? Like he wouldn't let me hit it. He was great that way. Because we sort of like instantly were like kindred spirits of nerddom. But he basically stopped me a couple times. He goes, I don't think he said, you reminded me, you need to be more specific. Are you going to start it on the, and it was a really good reminder that I kind of got a little bit lazy or lackadaisical about my start lines. And this is good advice. I don't care if you're a 20 handicap. Have Rotella used to say that. If you can't tell me where you're trying to hit it, your brain is just going to say, well, somewhere else, some vague target out in the ether. And you notice, again, the better the player, the more specific the target.
Right. And I find that with the better the player, the more they're kind of out there in the environment. It's about the target. It's about for this pitch, where do I want it to land? And taking in consideration the slope. Whereas for mortals, if you will, the focus so often comes back to me, what am I doing technically? And if I can't do it, is the day going to be ruined? And is it going to be proof that, I will suck for all of eternity? and where I find the good players, it's like they're able to just kind of go with if the shot doesn't come off, they're fine with it. Doesn't mean that they're eternally damned to mediocrity, but they just have better focus on being out there and responding to that.
I think a lot of higher handicap players, or a lot of golfers in general, think that they have to be more technically focused. And I've had people say this to me. Oh, sure, all that strategy stuff and all that's great, but I'm not good enough I'm not there yet. Like I don't have my swing isn't there yet. They don't think they're good enough to focus on those things. But the irony is, listen, I got a million technical things that I'm working on. But when I'm actually playing, I'm still trying to play the game. And also what it does is it mitigates, some of your, when you hit a bad shot, like the other day when I played in this little, Friday game, I hit a lot of good shots, but I hit some bad shots that didn't turn out. And then, I hit one ball halfway up a tree, and I hit my best shot of the day after I took my unplayable, because I was like, because the shot I hit into the halfway up a tree, I just smoked it. I just pushed it a little bit, but I was able to kind of go, well, what's this next shot in front of me, and how am I going to hit that one? As opposed to a lot of players that go, well, what did I do technically wrong that produced that shot, and now is that my fate for the rest of this day?
Yeah, exactly. Well, a lot of it is where are you placing your attention? And a lot of golfers have this experience that if they're hitting approach shots to the green, they're all over the place. But if they have to hit out of the trees and they have to keep it low, sometimes they can hit some really good shots. And I would say that's based on your attention on things like the trajectory and what's going to happen with that shot, as opposed to what's the technical thing I have to do in my backswing to execute this shot. So the focus of your attention creates the shot, as opposed to you trying to think your way through the shot.
Well said, Coach Tim. O'ConnorGolf.ca. You can follow Timmy, sign up for his Substack. The latest one is a sample chapter of Quiet Mind Golf. And once I remembered it, I was very, very, very impressed by it. Thanks to Mike Romatowski, Mach3speedtraining.com. And I'm going to be honest with everyone. Like, I ordered them. It's not like he gave them to me for free. I spent real money on them because I really, the idea resonated with me immediately. And I thought, this is a way to work on my body at the same time as working on my swing. So check that out. On the Masters weekend, our guest will be David Ledbetter. Thanks to Andy Broomer for hooking us up with Ledbetter. What did I miss? Did I miss anything?
We're gonna do a tease about one of our new sponsors.
Oh, right. Yeah. Who is OscarBravo.com?
That's right.
You're not going to believe this stuff, folks. The probably the most unique golf wear that Tim and I have ever been exposed to.
Absolutely.
And I think it'll be interesting for our audience. So see if you want to be the only person, we'll just say this. If you want to be the only person at your golf club or in a golf situation, we can guarantee this. If you find out more about who is OscarBravo.com, nobody else will be wearing these golf clothes.
Yeah, exactly. I think it reminds me of, I love those ads. The guy who looks like he's traveled around the world, some kind of retired gazillionaire. The guy who goes, I don't usually drink beer, but what I do.
Yeah, you will become the most interesting man in the world once you wear this clothing.
At your club, at least.
The Humble and Fred Show, we've been on another week's vacation. We get back at it on Tuesday, March 6th, 7th. By the time this comes on, because we're taping this show at a different time. So on the 7th of March, go back if you've missed a Humble and Fred Show. That will be when we restart our winter session. What am I trying to say? We've been on vacation for a week.
And our brains have turned to mush.
Yeah. Do you have anything else? Because I think we're done.
No, I am done. You've covered it. So yeah, it's TO'Connor.substack, or just go on Substack and look for that. But yeah, thanks for that shout out on that. And good to see. So we're recording this on Sunday, which is the 5th, and you say that Humble and Fred comes back on what, Tuesday?
On Tuesday the 7th. And let's not forget TaylorMadeGolf.ca. Not that we would, but once again, the new line of stealth equipment is out. This will be the year for you to get into that. Forget the commercials about forgiveness. One of the things they're trying to get across is that these clubs go far and they're easy to hit. So that's a pretty good combination. What did you want to say there, sir?
I got the Spider GTX putter.
Yeah, you're doing it.
Just got it this week, and I'm loving it.
I know one thing. If I had the Spider GTX putter on Friday, I would have shot 69. Because once you three putt 5 times, it definitely affects your score. I shot 77 with 3 birdies and an eagle. That's how bad I putted.
Ooh.
No, I know. Thanks for that noise. Because believe me,
there's nothing more to say.
Yeah, when I left the golf course, I'm like, I think I left a few strokes out there. Anyway, thank you to everyone who tunes in. Don't forget to subscribe and like the podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Check out Guitar George. He knows all the